Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? Today a bit of a different one. This is a ban list update, not the current ban list. It's a bit older actually, but I feel like not that many people have updated the deck. I've seen a few, but I felt like maybe if, and this is definitely not because I'm running out of content, definitely this is because I felt like this deck could have been better from the start, and I played it a bit more often now, and also because the deck needed to be updated a little bit for it still to work. So I've made some tweaks here and there, and I hope that this will suffice a deck that is somewhat competitive. It's like probably one of the more competitive budget decks where you don't have to spend that much, and probably one of the best decks to play for like bang for your buck if you actually want to be climbing well past Platinum 4 maybe. It's not going to get you that high up, but it is still fine. With a few extra additions, a few staple cards that you might already have, this deck will also be a tiny bit better. So we're starting off. I still decided to run one of the slower swallows, especially because you run more cards now that aren't Floowandereeze support cards or cards that like just get your monster on board. This card became even better because then on the crackback you can actually draw into cards that help you win the game or help you go a certain way. And since Barrier Statue is banned now, this is as well a nice addition. Plus also it is a winged beast monster, which works with the new, I want to say, but not really new quick play spell that they have. I decided to include at 1 because we were quite short on the ultra rare, so we're still only at like 2 ultra rares that you actually would have to craft that weren't part of something else before, and that's why I decided to include one of this. And this card still works pretty fine. You draw 2 cards. You can always use this card then at the end of your combo because you can still normal summon another card with M-Pen, and if you then don't have other stuff to go into, because usually you don't if you go first, then you have this in hand because you searched it before maybe, then you can still draw 2 cards during the next draw step. That is quite fun. That's it. You don't have to run it, but I think it is somewhat of an interesting tech card. We definitely want to be running 3 of this. This searches you and well basically starts your combo, because funny enough, Iglin does not start your combo because you still need one other level 1 monster, because otherwise you can't tribute anything, because you'll only be able to search one level 7 or higher, and you cannot summon any of the other ones unless you actually have another tribute on board. And the problem is if you go first, then this card is dead because the effect doesn't go off, because well, technically there is ways of how it would work with this one. For example, it can work and so on. Sometimes you do banish stuff, but really you actually don't that much. And the other thing is this card is a lot of the time dead because you lack a few cards that you can get into the graveyard, especially with the newest build. So technically this one is the only one that actually starts your combo without you having some other kind of setup. So this is really important. And if this one gets ashed or brailored or impermed, you're a bit screwed. That's why like stuff like Called by the Grave is nice if you have it. And well, obviously the other one, that one-off that stops that kind of stuff, the cross-out one. So yeah, this card very important. Iglin very important as well because it searches you any of your boss monsters basically. I decided to bump down the M-Pens down to 1 just to be able to play more consistency cards in the deck, because I want to keep it under 10 super rares, and that's what I'm trying to do. If you feel like 1 is a bit short, because you can recycle it, you can banish it from your graveyard with Stree and then get it back with Tokan. That's a card that like that's a combo that you can use, and to get this card back to your hand. Other than that, you can put it back into your deck with Ryza. That's also possible. So technically you're fine, but you can't then use it 2 turns in a row, which is a bit annoying. But you know, it's a budget deck, so we try to cut stuff where we can, and this is where I felt like you could cut stuff, but if you feel like you can't, then you can put one of them back in again. Another card to mention here is Mist Valley Apex Avian. Very good card to also summon off. It's a nice negate. It's a negate that you can use every turn, so this is also nice. So definitely a card you can be including. Up to the next one, this card banishes stuff from anyone's graveyard, any card as well, which is quite nice. If your opponent already used some kind of hand trap, then this can be quite nice. If you've already used like a spell card, then this can be quite nice, but you don't have that many spell traps anymore to use, so usually there's not that much you can do with this specific one. Technically, if you use it with the field spell and you use Pathfinder before, then it works, but if you use Pathfinder and you can trigger the field spell, then you wouldn't be searching this one, but you'd be searching this one anyway. But just to say, this one can help but doesn't start you off. Technically you could try to cut one Torcan, but I felt like I wanted to have lots of winged beasts, so this card isn't dead, so the field spell isn't dead because we have quite a few ways to get into the field spell, and that's why I decided to still go with like the full lineup. You can slash stuff here and there, but usually if you do, this is what you would place like with Pot of Duality or Pot of Extravagance then, and you would run that kind of consistency engine. But right now this is more how it would work. It's not perfect obviously because it is budget, and obviously running consistency cards over cards that don't really add much to it, like running this card at 3 for example, are better. But if you run this card at 3, it's not as cheap as possible. But I trust you that you're smart enough to realize, oh, if the deck is a bit too inconsistent and I want it to be a tiny bit better, oh, I'll just invest into 1 or 2 more ultra rares, or invest into these super rares or put them in. I trust that you're smart enough to be doing this. So this is just a skeleton of a playable deck, the least amount of cards I would say you kind of need to play it. Also with this card, I decided to run this because going second, this can be quite nice. You don't really have any spell trap removal, so this does work against floodgates at least some of them. So this is quite nice. And with this card you can also shuffle your winged beasts back, and then the more you have, the more you can shuffle back in hand and hopefully draw into a card that actually does stuff for you. The problem with this is that this and this card, they both do not work well together, because obviously if you draw cards by card effect that turn, then you cannot use this, because this card actually does also like draw you cards by card effect. So you have to keep that one in mind. But usually if you can resolve this card, then you will find one of your cards that actually gets you into something, so it's not too bad. Triple Pathfinder still, because technically like this deck really likes normal summons, but if you run that big of a lineup of your winged beasts, and if you have one of them and Pathfinder, use Pathfinder, go into the field spell, then this is at least a sure way of like securing the combo starter, securing your Rubina, and that is quite nice. The thing is, there's a few problems with it. Obviously, if your opponent ashes this, very bad, because you lost your normal summon and then you can't do anything. So yes, this is the drawback. But yet again, if you cut this card for like more searchy stuff, like you would take these 2 out, you would take these 2 out, you take one of them out and then replace it like with double a duality, double extravagance in one of them for example, then and 2 more of them, then you have the full consistency package. But like I said, these cards are fillers in here to keep the deck as cheap as possible. We run 4 tribute monsters because you will technically be able to search them, but also starting with 1 in hand isn't too bad. Since we also run this card, there's a slight chance that you actually excavate one, so that's not too bad either. But since this is your play starter and then you want to search this with it, it doesn't really matter all that much, but it's still good to see some in your hand from times. Terraforming Great gets a card into your graveyard, can be helpful for this one, and searches you your field spell. Another card that, sorry, I know you guys all hate this, but if you do not run the consistency cards, then this card, like it adds consistency for like basically free as a rare, and you will at least get Eglin. If your opponent doesn't know what you're trying to do, you might actually get Rubina, but most of the time you will at least get Eglin, and that can be quite nice, and it gets you a card into the graveyard for Stray as well. So it's not terrible. I know in the mirror it's bad, but if you play the mirror against a competent Floowandereeze deck, you will lose anyway. Promise, you will not win with a budget deck against a non-bricked opponent. Yes, you might unbrick them with this one, and then in like 1 out of 50 games you actually lose against that because of Jack in the hand. But that's a small price to pay for a lot more consistency in your deck, actually. You can cut it if you want, but I felt like it actually does surprisingly a lot. Fair enough, Whereof though did not do much, but Jack in the hand, it does a lot when you want to play a budget deck. But obviously there's better cards to be playing if you want to invest a bit more stuff into it. You can mix it with hand traps and then have like a massive consistency package with this at 3, this at 2, this at 2, this at 1, double dimension shifter, even max CU Ash Blossom, whatever you want to be playing. You can run stuff like Cult by the Grave in it as well, and then this is how you would fill out these kind of slots. I already talked about this card, very nice, very helpful. Very, very important. That's why I got semi-limited. Very important for consistency, for field presence, for lots of things. This card can be replaced if you do not want to be running it. If you want to free up another slot, this is one card that you do not have to craft, do not have to play, but it's still, I feel like, a nice card. Book of Moon can be very nice, go in second, go in first. Also Mirror Match is quite nice. You can basically replace this with any other hand trap if you like. Same for Forbidden Chalice. Then we run one of this, 1, 2, run 3, but only do run one. Technically, like, since we only have two ultra rares, I could have like put another 2 in and then we'd be even more consistent, but to be honest, I didn't want to craft them as well, and I felt like the deck worked fair enough, so I'm always trying to do the deck as cheap, like I said, as cheap as possible, and this was it, in my opinion. This card you get kind of for free in the master pack, so I don't include that one, but good hand trap. Obviously run anything instead if you like. I like to run 3 of this because this gives you another chance if your opponent asked you or something happened to actually get your play started, to actually go into certain things. So I do like running this at 3. I know most people would run it at 1 and they would play like different stuff. It's a thing to consider. I definitely understand that this card is like, you can cut this, but if you draw into one of this, since most people would want to be searching this, but if you already draw into one, since we play 3, being able to search a second one of this does nothing. Being able to search this one then usually doesn't do anything because you already have your setup kind of. Then searching this card makes more sense. Then you at least have something else in your deck. It's not an amazing card, but it does stuff. But I do understand if you want to play the ratios a bit differently. Extra deck is a lot of nonsense, a lot of level 1, rank 1 stuff that will be banished by Path of Prosperity. It doesn't matter. The extra deck does absolutely not matter. For high attack stats, that can be helpful. Geonator can be helpful. Deco Talker, obviously. Liger, obviously. The budget heroes. Yeah, if you want to, you can play Access Code Talker, you can play Nightmare Cerberus, Phoenix, but most people would be playing Extravagance anyway, so the extra deck really isn't the main part of this deck. So slap in whatever you have, whatever you like, whatever you want to be playing, and that is it. Hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I hope you're having a nice weekend or day.